Welcome to another episode of the Art of Feminine Negotiation podcast. I am really excited to be introducing you today to Rebecca Zung, and we're going to be talking about negotiating with a narcissist and winning. So welcome, Rebecca. It's so exciting to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And for our listeners, you're going to be in for a real treat, and you'll be able to see very quickly why I just had to have Rebecca on the podcast. We have such parallels, with my Art of Feminine Negotiation program. Rebecca's also a lawyer, and she's created this program. What's it called?
Slay your negotiation with a narcissist.
I love that. I love that. And I just finished reading Rebecca's book, Negotiate Like You Matter, really consistent philosophy. So I'm really excited to hear what Rebecca has to say. Rebecca Zung is recognized as one of the top 1% of attorneys in the US, but her journey wasn't always easy. She was married at 19 for the first time and had 3 kids by the age of 23. Then she was a divorced single mom. And she decided to go back to law school. So I got to give hats off. And she went from being a single mom college dropout to becoming one of the most powerful lawyers in the US at the helm of a multi-million-dollar practice. And she's now committed to sharing her secrets and empowering others to live their lives at the optimum level of success, both professionally and personally. Sound familiar? She's the author of the best-selling book, Negotiate Like You Matter, and also Breaking Free, a step-by-step divorce guide for achieving emotional, physical, and spiritual freedom. So Rebecca, I gotta say, I love that you focus on narcissists and other what I would call high conflict personality types. So it's a question that comes up a lot. Certainly from this podcast and my blogs and in my coaching programs, So how did you come to focus on negotiating with this challenging group?
It was sort of serendipitous in a lot of ways. Obviously, I've been a high net worth divorce lawyer for 20 years. So just in my practice, obviously, I've had many narcissists as clients, as opposing clients, as opposing counsel, everywhere. The world of high conflict divorce is filled with narcissists. So I really had started to speak on negotiation in general for a long time ago. I was looking for ways to develop my practice, and nobody wants to hear about divorce. So when I was pitching myself to, speak at, I've spoken at pretty much every Rotary in South Florida. I've like every women's group, every single thing possible. And so I came up with how to negotiate and win. And so I've been speaking on negotiation for a long time.
Yeah.
And I, wrote the book on negotiation. I was the keynote speaker for the American Bar Association, speaking on negotiation. So that's been kind of part of my wheelhouse for a long time. But it wasn't until I realized only just last year, that 2 people in my life at the time, thank God they're not in my life anymore, but 2 people in my life at the time were actually narcissists, my own life. One in a business setting and one in a extended family member. Not a romantic partner, not my husband, thank God, but people close enough that they could really wreak havoc, and they caused me a lot of what I say drama, trauma, and chaos. I mean, it was pretty a lot of consternation and pain, and it was only then that I realized, wow, like I could be a victim of a narcissist. They're that good. They're very, very cunning, extremely charismatic, especially the covert narcissists, which are the ones that I had to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I dealt with the whole thing, flying monkey, smear campaigns, the whole thing, and thought, you know what, I really need to develop, and put what I know about negotiating into what I've now learned all about narcissists, because I read everything I could get my hands on and talked to every professional that I could about it to learn as much as I could about narcissism. And I married the 2, and voila,
Beautiful.
my YouTube channel was born, the Slay program was born, and all of that. Yeah.
Well, and the timing is perfect because I got to say, I mean, it seems like we're seeing this huge shift where there's almost a pandemic of narcissism in the world. And I'd be interested, what are your thoughts on that? Would you agree that we're seeing this really increase now? And what do you have to say about that?
Oh, I actually call it a pandemic of narcissism. And I think that the pandemic of narcissism and the pandemic of COVID are actually causing more of an explosion in the
Yeah.
divorce rate because people we're having to, be stuck at home with people that maybe it was a tenuous situation to
Yeah.
begin with, and now it's, even worse. So, I know for myself, my YouTube channel went from 100 subscribers, which was pretty much just my family and friends, to, yeah, to now over 80,000 in like
Wow.
7 months. So,
Amazing.
and I'm coming up on 4 million views on my channel. So I know that um, it's there is a pandemic and a super need for people to understand how to negotiate with narcissists and actually create leverage and be able to win.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I always advocate digging in to know the deep why of the other party in any negotiation. And I'd be interested to hear, what have you found really drives the narcissist? What makes them tick?
It's so different than everybody else, all of the rest of the world who are not narcissistic. We are motivated and driven by lots of different things. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons that we may do things. Narcissists have one thing. There's just the one thing that motivates them all the time, and it's called narcissistic supply. And it's anything that feeds their ego, basically, which, most people think of it in terms of money, respect, power, the right friends, all that sort of thing. But for narcissists, most of their supply actually comes from devaluing people, debasing people, putting people down, making themselves feel superior to others, that sort of thing. And that's what uh, is really going on in a negotiation. I mean, so Watson is over here, reasonable person is over here looking for a resolution to the matter. Narcissist over here is actually going, how can I make this other person's life as miserable as possible? Because then I can continue to exert control over that person.
Yeah. Wow.
So you're not even on the same plane.
And so what's your advice on how do you deal with that? Like, can you share maybe some tips to disarm the narcissist? Are there magic phrases that you found to be effective, or any other tips you have for how do you, because when you're on this uneven playing field, and that's the question I'm getting all the time from, my listeners and women coming forward, is I hate negotiating at the best of time. I kind of shy away from it. And when I'm negotiating with somebody who seems, who's a narcissist, I don't know how to compete with that, because I'm just looking for a resolution without a fight, and I don't know how to get that with them. So what would you share?
Yeah. So it's counterintuitive, because for those people who are going, I just want a resolution, I don't want to fight, you are so vulnerable to what the narcissist is going to do. That's the exact thing that the narcissist wants to hear, because that means that you are open prey. You are like that gazelle in the middle of the Serengeti, and you are surrounded by lions. I mean, it's like you're not getting out alive in that situation. So, those of you who are out there saying, I don't want to fight, the only way you can get to the place where you don't end up fighting is to use my SLAY method, which is develop super strong strategy, create invincible leverage, which is what motivates and incentivizes the narcissist to be in conversation with you. Anticipate what the narcissist is going to do and be 2 steps ahead of them, and focus on you, your position, your case. And without that, you're sunk.
Yeah. Okay. And do you have any tips on how to disarm them? Like, obviously that preparation is key, being able to stand in your sort of power as well as key, but are there any strategies that you found that can be effective to help disarm the narcissist when you do come face to face with one?
There's a lot of different ways to disarm them. You know, I mean, to the overall way to disarm them in an overall strategy for the entire case is really going to take leverage, and it's really going to take a strategy to figure out what form of narcissistic supply is more important for them to keep, which is usually how they look, and, you know, looking good to the judge, looking good to the community, looking good to their employees maybe, or others, family members. All that's going to be more important for them to retain than the supply that they get from jerking you around and dragging you through the process and making you look bad. But on a day-to-day basis, the way you can disarm them is by not engaging in their bait. You know, when they say things like, you're a neglectful mother, or you're an alcoholic, or you're a drug addict or something, and you're sitting there like, well, geez, I'm helping them with their homework right now. I just picked them up from school. I'm taking them to Little League. I don't really know what the problem is over here, you know. So you want to fly into this defense mode, and you write all this stuff back. And then, you know, I have to remind people, please remember that every text, every email, every social media post, anything you put your hand to is a potential trial exhibit.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to see it again, do not write it. And so don't engage, don't get sucked into the bait. You know, if there's this huge long email about how awful you are and what a deadbeat dad you are, whatever it is, and there's one line in there that says, and what time are we meeting to exchange the kids? You just say, I'm in receipt of your email. I deny your allegations, and we can meet at 2:00 on Wednesday at Target. And that's it.
Beautiful. Yeah. And what kind of tricks would you say that our listeners should be prepared for when they're negotiating with a narcissist?
What kind of tricks?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
like you talked about the cunning, right? And how clever they are. And I wouldn't mind you going a little deeper on that, because I think a lot of people have a misconception about what narcissism is. So I loved at the beginning when you talked about that, like the covert narcissist. And so maybe first give some tips for how people can identify them, and then also what kind of tricks they should be prepared for when negotiating with one.
It really also, and I think that's a good question, because it really does depend on the type of narcissist that you're dealing with too. I mean, they all are driven by narcissistic supply. That's their food, their lifeblood, their oxygen. But covert narcissists tend to be more on the flying monkeys, smear campaign kind of thing, very under the radar. They want to present themselves as, you know, oh, I'm just so concerned about her. She's just drinking way too much. And, and so it's this smear campaign that's kind of like, it enveloped in this, oh, I'm just so caring, and it's just so sad that that he doesn't want anything to do with his family. That's so sad. Like that. Like the coverts are much more good at, and they're much better at being passive aggressive, like well, I guess if that's you don't want to come spend time with your family, I understand work is so important to you. Like they're very good at passive aggressive stuff like that. Whereas and coverts are actually also very good at not leaving a trail until they start getting squeezed. Once they're on the mask is coming off and the other side realizes who they are, then they start to slip up. All narcissists start to slip up once that mask starts coming down. Once they start getting exposed, they start to make mistakes.
Yeah.
That's when you start seeing once their narcissistic injury is inflamed, then it triggers narcissistic rage and they start making mistakes. They start sending emails that make them look bad. They start, getting unglued in front of people, or outbursts in court, things like that. But you got to get them to that point where, you kind of give them enough rope to hang themselves, sort of a thing. You know what I mean?
I do.
But so the over or grandiose narcissists tend to be more like they'll just ignore court orders. They just won't send over discovery. They just, they'll send over discovery that's, or both covert and overt will do, like, I'll send you 12 months of bank statements, but July will just happen to be missing. So now you got to go back and try to go get July, or they'll send you, a few months of credit card statements, but there's pages missing from the statement. So it just takes so much longer to go through it all. And then you have to file motions to compel and go to the court. And then what will happen is a lot of times, the day of the hearing on the motion to compel, all of a sudden the statements will show up. So you've now spent all this money, but you can't really go to the judge because at this point you now have the statements. It's like these little things where they're constantly, irking you, goading you to try to say things in emails. I had a client one time where the guy was like, all the visitation, because the child was a baby, was at her home. And so every single time he would bring this elaborate video camera set up because she was going to accuse him of bad things. So he had, made this point of videotaping every single thing that they were doing and saying in her home.
Yeah.
And what he thought he was going to do with that, I have no idea, but it's just annoying. It's annoying as hell. But they do that kind of stuff because they want to goad you into losing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other categories beside the covert and overt, or?
Well, the malignant is, usually an overlay of some other personality disorder as well. And I am not a psychologist, but I know enough to be dangerous and enough to, I shouldn't say enough to be dangerous, but I know enough to know what I need to know to negotiate with them. Yeah. And so malignant narcissists are the ones that are actually, they don't have any conscience about ruining your life. Yeah. And so those are the ones that'll accuse you of molesting your own child, accuse you of domestic violence when it didn't happen, tell everybody at work, that you are a cheater or a drug addict or something so that you end up losing your job. I mean, they have no conscience about completely ruining your life. I mean, those are the ones that, maybe stalking, violence, threats of violence, things like that.
Okay, beautiful. And some people think that it's impossible, frankly, to get a narcissist to negotiate successfully, and they get in absolute shutdown mode and are paralyzed. So what do you have to say to those people? Is there light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, I've had thousands of clients be able to do it, and I launched my Slay program in March, and I've now sold almost 800 of them. So I know that, and I get the feedback every day that the Slay has changed my life. And so I know that it's possible. I mean, in fact, you want them to settle before court if possible, because then there's no appeals process and you don't have to deal with more and more and more and more. If you get them to sign a marital settlement agreement, then it's a contract and it's done and it's over, and their only recourse then is whatever the recourse is to attack the contract, which is usually really hard because it's, now you're stuck with duress, coercion, incapacity or,
Yeah.
the things like that aren't really usually very strong in
Yeah.
attacking an agreement. So, so you do want them to sign, but there's a method to how you're going to get them there.
Yeah.
And it's basically creating a siege, it's a very strategic way of building an invisible fence around them. And you don't let them know that that fence is there until they are completely caged in.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. And I know you're not going to want to obviously give out the whole program structure, but can you give for our listeners out there at least some tips, some sort of light at the end of the tunnel for them about some strategies that they can use, and not even in divorce situations, just in their day-to-day lives, because especially because
Any kind.
an increase. Right?
Any negotiation
Absolutely.
with a narcissist, which doesn't even have to be a formal negotiation. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be like that there's a lawsuit involved or
Exactly.
whatever. It can just be negotiating, you're negotiating with your teenager sometimes or
Exactly.
whatever. Right. So, I mean, when it's a high stakes negotiation for your life, or, I have a lot of people who are dealing with business partners or who are dealing with family members in probate situations or things like that. The methodology is always still going to be the same, which is make sure that you have a strategy. And the first part of that strategy is creating your vision for what you want the outcome to be.
Mm-hmm.
What is that, and holding to that focus, because and the why part of my thing is focusing on you. And the reason why is because it's so easy when narcissists are inflamed and
Yeah.
you just feel like you are the one under siege all the time. Like you're just constantly defending, and you get into this cycle of figuring out what's wrong with the other side, and look at them, don't you see it, this isn't fair, blah blah blah. And so you're like in that cycle, and just to stop for a moment and go, well, what is it that I want and how am I going to get there?
Yeah.
Let me focus on that, and then let me come up with a way to be on the offensive so that I'm not constantly defending myself. And so, the first part of the S, you create the strategy is create your vision. And then, okay, what are the steps that I'm going to take to get there? Well, what do I need to research?
Yeah.
This is not like a wave the magic wand kind of a thing. I wish that I could do a 10-minute video and then people are like, that's it. It's a 4-hour crash course, but it has a 45-page workbook. And I just walk people through, where in your emails, for example, or your text messages, can there potentially be leverage? And a great piece of leverage is creating a summary of lies or inconsistencies, or a summary of, their bad behavior in some way, whatever that is. Wherever there's a pattern that you can expose them, that's a great piece of leverage. Great if you have a smoking gun.
Mm-hmm.
The person gave you herpes. That's fantastic. And they don't want the world to know. That's a fantastic piece of leverage.
Yeah.
Most cases don't have that, like, there it is, massive smoking gun. Most cases you have to build it, and you build it from what's in your information. You're the one that sits, and this is what I tell people. Yes, it's good to have a good lawyer, but I promise you your lawyer wants to win. So if you bring everything to your lawyer, look at the summary of lies, look at the summary of inconsistencies. Here's exhibits for you already done. Here's a summary. Here's a tab that tab 1 is this email, tab 2 is this email. If everything lines up, your lawyer will love you, and you will save thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Your lawyer does not sit on your mound of text messages, emails, social media, photographs, witnesses. You're the one that has access to all of that.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to pay your lawyer, $400, $500, $600, $700 an hour, whatever it is that you're paying your lawyer, to go through all of that and create those exhibits. It's going to be so much better for you if you do it.
Yeah.
And then you use those summaries at whatever your dispute resolution conference is. If we go to trial, we are going to expose you in this way. So it will be better for you if you sign this agreement now.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. And how about on the personal sphere? Because I'm a big believer, and it sounds like you are as well, that all of life is a negotiation. You know, again, whether you're negotiating with your intimate partner, your kids, the bank, a local contractor, or multi-million-dollar deals. So what kind of advice would you give for people in their personal life? I mean, other than the obvious proximity that, you know, who you hang around with, your environment is important. So when you can, try and cut some of those narcissists out of your life. But if you're in a personal situation where you have to, and what kind of advice would you give for somebody about how to, whether it's getting leverage or just ways to show up differently to be able to get some traction?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a free webinar, which I do recommend people come to. It's about an hour of content, but so I'll just briefly give you, you know, I talk about the 3 B's, which is boundaries, brief, and barter. So boundaries is just creating super strong boundaries. You know, if you have to have this person in your life, then how are you going, you decide how that's going to look for you. You know, are they going to be allowed in your house? Are they going to be allowed to text you 50 times a day? Or are you just going to respond once? If you're going to talk to them, okay, the meeting's going to be 30 minutes. Here's the agenda. After that, I'm done. You know, I mean, you're not just here to be, a doormat at all times. You know, you start defining what that looks like. So, and then brief is the same thing. You know, in a lot of ways, it's just, you know, keep it brief. Keep it, you know, where you can keep your emotions in check, just the facts. And then bartering is what I call, what my name for it is. I've heard other people call it narcissistic fluffing or something like that, but basically you're giving some supply to the narcissist to get what you want. You know, like, oh, can you help Johnny with his math homework? You're so much better at math than I am. And, you know, and it's like, you just feel like you want to vomit, right? But it gives you something that you want, which is, you know, so, and so those are like, that's like the very, very brief version of what I go into in my free webinar. But yeah.
I love that. Well, and that's consistent within your book. You talk, obviously, and it's something that I address in my Art of Feminine Negotiation, that everybody wants to believe they matter. And a narcissist, that's on steroids, right? So in any negotiation with anybody, letting somebody have that little bit where they feel like they matter, that they're seen, that they're heard, can be a powerful tool with narcissists and non-narcissists alike. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And even if you hate their guts, I mean, if you are talking to them, it's because you need something from them. So give a little something. Now, don't just do it to do it. You're going to do it to, for a purpose for you. And, you know, just decide ahead of time what that's going to be, and then do it and get out and go take a shower after if you need to.
I love it. And dealing with, I know you also, I mean, obviously your expertise and your sort of niche is on the narcissist, but I know you do a lot of work as well with other sort of conflict driven or more challenging personalities. So leaving aside the narcissist for a moment, how would you say people can maybe get some leverage and, you know, for what they want in negotiation with the other person when they're more powerful than them, right? Not necessarily a narcissist, but just definitely when they're, at least there, either there is or there seems to be that power imbalance.
Yeah, I mean, there's again, like, you know, I in my book I talk about embedded commands, and you kind of giving something to get something, and you know, there's a beautiful example, and I talk about this in my book as well. I would encourage everybody to go look at the video on YouTube where Mr. Rogers was asking for $20 million for his show from one of the senators at the time, Senator Tom Pastore. And Tom Pastore was known in the 60s as being extremely, you know, hard ass, Mr. Rogers shows up. He's got what looks like no leverage. I mean, at the time, he was not Mr. Rogers that we all know. He had some little, cable network show out of Pittsburgh. And he was asking for $20 million, which in today's time would be, millions more, 100 million or something, probably. I don't even know. I did the calculation in my book, but I don't remember what it is now. So it wasn't a small amount of money that he was asking for. And the guy starts off with, well, what do you want, Rogers? And why should we give you any money? He calls him Rogers. Like, it doesn't even, it's like so disrespectful. And, he used embedded commands, which is sort of like narcissistic fluffing, like, well, I have a concern for the children of our community, as I'm sure you do, and we all do, things like that. And it was really a form of fluffing, a form of bartering, so obviously if you don't give this money, you hate children.
It was so skillful and seemingly authentic. I mean, I love that video footage. I saw that quite some time ago, and I remember being so impacted, like so low key, like there's the opposite, none of that chest beating or rising or needing to show up from a place of power. It was so quiet and authentic, and
by the end, Tom Pastore is like, I can't wait to watch it. He's like almost in tears.
I know. Here, let me give you more money. It was so powerful.
Exactly.
It's like, he became his biggest advocate. That was beautifully handled. So
exactly.
Now, in mine, I'd be really interested on your views, Rebecca, because my whole sort of the premise of the art of feminine negotiation, what motivated me originally in that is because I just saw so many women sort of buying into this myth, as I say, that it's a man's world and success has to be defined exclusively on that masculine model. And the more I studied, I'm like, gosh, it drives me crazy. Because if you look at sort of the key qualities that make and mark the best negotiators, 5 out of 6 of them, most people would consider to be feminine traits, rapport building, empathy, flexibility, intuition, trust building. And assertiveness, most people would consider masculine, but even that's normally based on a misconception where they conflate assertive with aggressive. But I'm wondering, in the context of a narcissist, what do you think about whether those qualities can be effective? Like if you are skilled at building rapport and bringing empathy to the table and building trust and being flexible and intuitive and also being able to be assertive, are those qualities that'll stand you in good stead, or are the rules different altogether when you're dealing with a narcissist?
Oh, absolutely. I think that those are still things that you're going to bring, but you just have to remember that you're bringing them to somebody who that's all they need is show me that I matter. Show me that I'm going to win. Show me that I'm going to win at your expense. That you're going to be upset if you lose. So you have to kind of be okay with putting your ego aside in the end, because if they think that you've got them, or that you've won, and that you feel that way, they're never going to give in. So it's in some ways you kind of have to do your best, Meryl Streep or Robert De Niro or whatever, whoever your favorite actress is or actor, and just go, oh my God, I can't believe you got that. And, this is so awful, knowing full well it was right in your range that you had decided. And that's kind of part of your strategy. The S part of my SLAY is developing your best case scenario, your worst case scenario, doing your risk analysis, figuring out, is this worth it? And to ask for this, and then developing your choke point. At what point do you walk away? At what point do you go, okay, I could do better if I just go in front of the judge or whatever, depending on whatever your situation is, or you just walk away because it's not even worth it, depending on if it's a case or not. But you develop, the key is having all of that ready to go ahead of time, so that when you get into that situation, you're not feeling emotional, you're not feeling scared, you're not feeling powerless, you're feeling like you've got the tools, I'm ready, I know exactly what they're going to argue, I'm ready to refute it. And, but you do it in a way that builds rapport. You know, I understand that this is your position and you feel that you have merit in this position because blah, blah, blah. However, here's why, you know, maybe your position isn't the right one, you know, but you can acknowledge them and, you know, all of that stuff that you do to build rapport, use their name, direct eye contact, make them feel like they're, I mean, the more you can make them feel seen, heard, and feeling like they matter, the further you're going to get.
Yeah, love it. Beautiful. And it's funny, as you were talking, it got me thinking, because one of the other elements I often preach is, I call it no fear negotiating, like no fear, no ego, no attachment, no reactivity. And you've really touched on that. Shelve your ego when you're in that situation. That attachment, don't be so attached to the result. You got to have that flexibility. Watch your reactivity when you're dealing with a narcissist. Don't let them bait you. I'd be interested, what element do you think that fear plays? I'm assuming that a narcissist would feed on fear. So love your thoughts on that, Rebecca.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's like the blood in the water for the
Yeah.
shark. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
So, and so much of the strategy and focusing on you is what I talk about in my book, which is the M part is, you know, my value is defined by me, you and you alone define your value, figure out what your mindset is. 50%, I have a whole chart, which you probably saw in the book, like this little pictogram or whatever that you know, we made, which basically shows like 50%. I think 50%. Let me go back. I think 80% of a negotiation is won before you even walk into a room, and I think 50% of that is your mindset.
Yep.
And feeling powerful and feeling like, you know, the narcissist does not always win. I mean, I can tell you so many times that people have come into my office, not just women, men too.
Yeah.
There are lots of women narcissists out there.
Yes.
Don't,
Oh
please.
yeah.
And who say they're always going to win. Everybody believes them. I can never, you know, do this, because they've got you thinking that. They do have you feeling that way. And they've lined up the world so that it feels to you like you have no power, but you absolutely do. I've seen the worst, most malignant narcissists end up signing agreements because it really made sense for them to do that. Yeah. So just believe that you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think the psychology is so, so important. I mean, that's the game changer, the psychology that you show up with, that inner mindset work. Absolutely. So I'd be interested on your thoughts about, because we talked at the beginning about how we are seeing this huge shift in that sort of pandemic, as you say, of narcissism in the world. Do you have any thoughts about what is creating that? Like, what is the shift that's causing this pandemic at the moment?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I think that it, you know, it could be politics. I mean, I'm not sure. I will say, you know, I try to stay away from making any comments about politicians specifically, because I don't want to alienate anybody from my people who are listening to me, because I want them to get the information that they need to get to better their lives. And so, and we're so polarized nowadays in the United States. And so, but, you know, it could be that. I do know this, that, you know, several years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I used to joke that my next book was going to be called "My Husband is Controlling, My Wife is Crazy," because that's what they all used to say.
Like, catchy title. I like it.
Yeah. But now they just all say they're a narcissist.
Yeah.
That's the new word. So it's kind of another way of saying the same thing.
Yeah. Perfect. So, actually, I hope you are going to come out with a book on narcissists, because I do think there's a growing awareness about it, but also I think it is a growing issue to be dealt with. So, and I understand you have a gift for our listeners. So can you tell us about that?
So it's my free Crush My Negotiation prep worksheet, which has been downloaded by almost 40,000 people now. So I know that it has helped. I've had people tell me they've won their entire negotiation just on my worksheet, which
Nice.
is interesting. So it's 15 pages. It's basically an ebook, and you can get that at winmynegotiation.com. So you just go to winmynegotiation.com and you can grab it.
Beautiful. I'm just writing that down. And for all our listeners, I will make sure to include that in the show notes as well. So you can grab that free ebook. Sounds like a great resource. Absolutely. So, and that's winmynegotiation.com, but I'll make sure to put that in the show notes as well. And Rebecca, what would you say is one of the greatest mindset shifts that you've ever had in your life? Whether it doesn't have to even be about negotiation. What was one of those big aha moments for you, would you say?
Oh, it was definitely when I was in Hawaii about a year and a half ago, and I was still being plagued by a couple of narcissists. And I realized I was at the top of this mountain, a beautiful view, and like as close to God or universe or whatever it is that you call that power above. And I had this sudden aha moment. Oh my God, if I am focusing on what they're doing, what's going to happen next, and worrying about that whole thing, every moment I spend on that is the moment I am not in creation.
Yeah.
I am not doing something positive. I am not using my gifts to help people in the world. I cannot be in both places at once. And at that moment, I decided I'm going to write my next book, which was Negotiate Like You Matter.
Yeah.
I committed to writing 3,000 words a day. I knocked that book out in a couple
Wow.
of weeks. I ended up sending it to different people to get testimonials, one of whom was Robert Shapiro, the great lawyer. He actually called me and loved the book so much that he offered to write the foreword for it.
Nice.
Great things started to happen. Since then, I've started my YouTube channel. I'm talking to you and all these other fantastic people. And it's just changed my world because I've decided that I was not going to focus on all the bad stuff. And I could ruminate, baby. Like, let me tell you, like I could ruminate with the best of them on all the nasty stuff, get down in the ditch. So, really learning to pivot and go, okay, where's your mind right now? Is it there or is it here? Oh, let me get back over here. That was the most helpful thing ever for me.
I love it. I love it. Well, I can't believe how quick the time has gone. Thank you so much for joining us, Rebecca. This has been fabulous. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved spending time with you.
Absolutely. And we'll have to do this again at some point when your next book comes out as well. And for our listeners out there, make sure if you want to learn more about Rebecca as well, check it out at www.rebeccazung.com. And again, make sure to check that free book so you can grab her worksheet. Sounds like it'd be a super resource for you. So for all of you out there, I'm sure you got loads of value from this episode. If so, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, but also share this. Anyone that you know, especially if they're going through a divorce or dealing with a narcissist in their life, make sure you share this episode. And as always, the podcast generally, if you think they can get some value out of it. And let's face it, who couldn't benefit from this approach? This is a growing topic and we're seeing an increased awareness about it. All of life is a negotiation, so the more prepared you are, the better life you're going to be able to grab. So, and also make sure to join our Women on Purpose community if you haven't done that yet at facebook.com/groups, Women on Purpose community. And that's a wrap for this episode. So until next time, go forth and negotiate your best life on your terms so you can stop missing out and start getting more of what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom.